All right, and this time, strangely enough, we are purposefully late. We actually were all here, but I noticed the Godless Iowan say, Suris at least isn't late on my channel, and we delayed it another minute out of spite. So with that said, everybody,
I didn't know that. Okay.
You didn't know that?
No.
Well,
I'm looking at it now. Okay, all right.
that's why I'm in control of the live button.
It's your fault.
It's all your fault, Iowan. But with that said, my name is Suris, and we're here with the 4th episode of the Hammered Out podcast. We also have Ocean Keltoy here as my co-host. This is going to be the last time he's going to be able to co-host for a little bit. He's going to be kind of busy, so enjoy him until December.
Yep.
We also have.
I don't know what that means. I'm confused now.
You don't know what enjoying you until December means? I'm sure the internet can help. I'm sure.
I'm gonna Google this.
With that said, we also have Steve McRae here is our guest today. We figured if we were going to get one member of the non-sequitur show on last week, we'd go ahead and get another one on this week. And before we fully introduce Steve, which shouldn't really need much introduction at this point, but screw it, we'll do it anyway.
Happy Thursday, though.
Yes, it is Thursday. We also have hammers. That is name of the podcast. Strange, right?
There's hammers there.
But normally we have this podcast every other Thursday, but since I am doing daily uploads now, I figured that maybe trying to see what we can do about getting the podcast happening more often as well would probably be a little more imperative, which sucks for Ocean because
my life is busy as shit.
He can't make it as many times.
Yes. For the next 2 weeks, I'll be out due to professional obligations, but I'll be back in December. So here we are. But here we are with Steve McRae, and Steve McRae is the co-host of the Non Sequitur Show. He is also the purveyor of the Great Debate community, and also he has a channel on his own, which he has a delineation that he posted recently on Twitter of like which Steve you're getting on each of these platforms. Apparently, with Non Sequitur Show, it's the real you, and then there's like varying degrees of giving a shit, all the way down to Facebook, where you give absolutely no fucks. So anyway, with Steve, hey, how are you doing, man?
Hey, what's up, guys? I know it won't show on your podcast, but it's kind of disconcerting for me to be the big head right now. I'm on top with the stretched out background and the head the size of Jupiter, but
it's not the size of Jupiter. You don't have the little swirly dot. You'll be fine.
Well, it's better than the last thing you did with me in your video, where you made me look like I was a crack whore.
Everybody remembers Caffeine Gate.
Yeah, I'm still having jitters from that.
Hey, I slowed you down. I slowed you down in the re-upload.
It didn't help.
You're tolerable in the re-upload.
It didn't make. He told me he slowed it down, and it didn't seem to make any notable difference. I was like, okay, what'd you do?
I can put both videos to private and just show you both, and you'll see the difference side by side.
I don't want you ever sending me something private.
Is it because of the last thing that I sent you private?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty much.
Just so everybody's aware, the joke of that is I showed him the atheist's worst nightmare.
Right.
You see, a well-made banana has 3 ridges in the front, perfect for the 3 fingers there, and a part right here to shove up TJ Kirk's butt.
Got it. So, Steve, I just want to jump in a little bit.
I'm a theist now. Great.
You heard it here first, folks. Steve is now a theist. This is the thing that we're going to clip that and send it out to all the people that are accusing you of being a theist.
I was a pope for agnosticism for what, 2 days, and now I'm a theist. Boy, I just can't keep my position.
I have a question.
Right.
As the pope for agnosticism, when you're sitting on your throne, do you sit on it with like with your face facing one end and your ass facing the other, or do you sit firmly in the middle where like in the middle,
like my picture that
So you just have
to figure out. See, I'm right in the middle between heaven and hell.
So you just have the fence like right up in your butt crack, just slowly
right
easing
there.
in.
I'm like,
that's a medieval torture method, right?
Yeah,
what are you doing?
Mine doesn't really go past a certain meridian line. I mean, it's just kind of I don't like. No.
Steve sits in medieval torture method poses because it's the only way he can tolerate life anymore.
It makes for a fun Saturday.
Yeah, you've had Kent Hovind on your channel enough. I'd imagine that's probably the only way you can sit anymore comfortably.
Yeah, that's far more painful, trust me.
He sits with one cheek on and one cheek off the chair.
Yeah. I think it's probably worse if I have to sit through another Mr. Intelligent Design discussion.
Can we not use
I love him so much. So actually your channel has been like the Steve McRae channel, which it predates I think both the Great Debate Community and non-sequitur show, right?
Considerably
Has been the birthplace of a lot of personalities on YouTube. It's like we've
Sure,
had
blame me. Go for it. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
that's your fault.
You brought Kent Hovind back into the limelight, and you admitted it yourself.
This is true. I resurrected Kent Hovind. Yes, that's true.
I'm trying to recall if Mr. ID, if that's where he showed up first, was your play.
Mr. ID was somebody that I found, and I said I got to get this. I got to get this guy on my show. Got to do it, and I've been regretting that decision ever since.
All right, tell the audience a little bit about who Mr. ID is and how you found that little guy.
Mr. Intelligent Design is a supposedly civil engineer that has never went to any type of class. He even admitted that he has no formal education at some point in time. He has written 6 Kindle books on the subject of intelligence, which to him is some bizarre version of an experiment where he took a bunch of toilet paper and put it in a bunch of sheets and then dropped an egg on it. And then when the egg didn't break, he removed he had one toilet paper, he dropped an egg through it, it broke. He had another toilet paper sheet to it. It didn't break. Well, he kept on doing it until it didn't break. And that was his experiment showing that he is intelligent. And so therefore now he is Mr. Intelligent Design, explaining to everybody what true intelligence is.
His method of determining whether or not he was intelligent was playing with napkins and an egg.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. This is the
I think
first
there's like
time
something
this is
about
happening
intelligence
on this podcast.
Universe, right?
I think that's well deserved.
So, all right, so you found a lot of these people, and I guess like that's where your channel is, like where a lot of people know of me from as well, because I've popped onto your channel a couple of times, and there's been a lot of like fights and feuds onto your channel as well. Like,
Never.
Fights on
my
Steve's
channel's
channel?
so mellow. What are you talking about?
That has never happened.
Please. Okay, yeah.
So, like, all right, you don't design this stuff to happen, right? Or do you? Like how? Like, because you get a lot of like every once in a while, it's like you get a really nice, calm discussion, but there's some blowouts that happen. Like, because
are you asking for the insider information on this?
I'm wondering what you're like, if this is on purpose or not. Like, what are
I'll tell you. I can tell you this. On non sequitur, some of the things that we do are somewhat planned. Obviously,
right.
We're going for that dumpster fire. On my channel, no, not really. They are spur of the moment. Now, will I foster a few things if I see some embers, burning?
Now, I'd like to also, by the way, Pam stole my banana, so I no longer have the snack I wanted to have on the show. So that's awesome. But with that said, I'd like to juxtapose that to what you said earlier, where you said that on non-sequitur show you'll get more of the real you. Non-sequitur show is also where more of the dumpster fires happen. So the real Steve McRae sits on a throne that is a wooden fence, just tossing cocktail Molotovs off, trying to start dumpster fires.
We are very good at starting dumpster fires. As a matter of fact, do you guys remember the CGI with the dumpster fire, the fire coming out of the dumpster and it had burned in like Red's Rhetoric thing? Yeah, I made that, right? I made that through
Awesome.
through a CGI program. So yeah, that's my shtick, is to make sure that we have a decent dumpster fire. And even the other night when we had a guest that was not up to speed, to say the least, somebody who was woefully underqualified to be going against Darn Raw. We still made it into a huge
about? That was hilarious.
In fact, that was one of our more popular episodes. I don't understand.
I referenced that episode in my episode last time because oddly enough, my yesterday's episode referenced a guy named Jason, not the Jason that you brought onto the non sequitur show. And I pointed out that the level of cringe on my channel just for mentioning that episode, along with what I was going to be talking about, started to reach points where I was getting uncomfortable.
I can understand that.
So we got the story about like how Kyle met you, a little bit from Kyle's perspective. So if you want, can we talk a little bit?
Fucker say?
What's the? He had horrible things to say about you. Don't watch it. But I want to hear a little bit about your side of that. With like, how did Kyle find you? And how did the idea for the non sequitur show kind of begin?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of the similar way I met you. Our eyes met from across the bar.
Right.
It was, a lot of.
I remember it well.
What happened was I had been having a lot of shows on my particular channel, at least trying to have these conversations like everybody seems to be doing now, right? It's ubiquitous. But back then, it was only happening on one or two different channels, and I didn't think they were doing it very well. And so I took that idea and I tried to personalize it and run with it. And so I'd have people come on and have guests come on, and we would have real, actual conversations. Well, Kyle really enjoyed that. He had found my channel through Arn Raw and Ken and a few other places that he would be watching. And anyways, he wanted to do a little piece in a magazine called Beverly Hills Magazine on it, because he was writing a chef review or something. He was doing some kind of thing with them for his cooking stuff. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. And we just started talking, and he's just like, eventually like, you know what, we should do a podcast. And I'm like, shit, let's do it. And we started the podcast, and it was going pretty well. We had great guests and everything. But we were like, we need to get into YouTube, because I don't think he was really thinking that YouTube was the way to go. And I loved YouTube, right? So I said, you know, we got to break into YouTube. Let's just make that happen. And so we started putting the podcast on YouTube, and then we started doing these live shows, and we had just had our 300th episode. It is a combination of his creativity, because I have no creativity when it comes to the arts, except for like CGI, make that kind of stuff. But he does all the thumbs. And we just brainstorm ideas. We get out there and hustle for guests, and it just works well because he's the more laid back,
Frack your
center kind of
e-begging,
stuff.
Suris.
He's just,
You'll get
you know,
nothing from us.
what you see is what you get. I'm
Right.
more of the analytical, science kind of guy. You know,
So
I'm also what you see what you get.
Hold on, we have a few super chats, and it matters because Pam is an evil person. First one is from Zero for $20 and 2 pennies for some reason. Frack your e-begging, Suris. You'll get nothing from us while also giving us money. And Cajun Crustacean says, ring-a-ring-ring banana phone. Unfortunately, Pam has let everybody know that for every dollar that is donated in Super Chat, she will hit me in my head with the hammer.
Oh, you know, you really had me going to you said head. I was like so thinking could have been something a lot more wild.
No, so I guess I'm just here. She is taking the camera.
For $20, that better be a groin strike. I'm telling you.
Ow!
Here we go.
Stop. Okay, that is okay. Who is counting? That way I know I'm not getting more abuse than was paid for.
I'm not counting.
I think you're at 10.
I think he's still at 3.
4.
Why'd you hit me on the headphone? Why are you doing this? I choose life. Ow. It's not me doing it. These are my hands. Okay.
That was kind of excellent.
I don't know what the hell I just watched.
This is the person.
I think I've seen something similar on Pornhub. I just trying to remember the details.
This is the person that I've chosen to spend the rest of my life with. Everybody.
How you talk her into that is beyond me.
You know what? I think it's more. So the story of how we got together basically boils down to we were at Dragon Con. She came home with me, and she just never left. And it's been 2.5 years.
I've done that. I met a girl once. She came into my work. She was telling me she was going through a divorce. We happened to be talking for a while. We went out that night, stayed at a hotel, moved in together the next day.
Inane! Why? Why would you do that? Cedrino, why?
I agree with the name what he just said. Yes.
Inane just said she never said which head.
Right, exactly.
Why? What do you stop? What do you? Ow! Why?
That's what I saw on Pornhub.
Why?
There, now I remember.
Why are you guys letting me take so much abuse? Why are you paying for me to get abused?
Please.
Isn't that what we all do on YouTube in some form?
Don't tell them the secret, Steve.
as Ocean said, I had broken it down on my my Twitter thing. The non-sequitur show is the real me. My channel is the real me with a little more no give a shit attitude. The GDC on G Plus, the real me with much more no give a shit attitude.
That's you with no filter.
Yeah, no filter. No, it gets better. Facebook, mostly the real me combined with a totally not give a shit attitude, and then Twitter, totally don't give a flying fuck. The people take me serious on Twitter. I mean, I'm always like telling them the truth. I mean, I'm not bullshitting, but it's like I don't care really. I just honestly don't. Your opinion means nothing to me on Twitter. If you have a valid opinion, pretty much, I will expect you on the show, on my channel, on anybody else's channel. Twitter's my dumpster fire. I don't give a shit if people are like, well, Steve's such an asshole.
Speaking of dumpster
okay,
fires,
but is he wrong?
John Detrays gave a super chat saying, "Screw the dumpster fire. Let's start a banana fire." I also donated $5, so I'm getting hit more. Stop. They can hear that making impact.
This is interesting. We've started this mess. What is happening here? Okay.
This was not
going in a
planned.
totally
This was,
different
she
direction
stole
than I was
my
told.
hammer, and this is what's happening.
This is not
now.
the direction I thought it was going to go either. Apparently, this is a thing that happened. Anyway,
Not the kind of video I want to be with two guys on. Okay, trust me.
You don't want to be on a video where a lady is taking a hammer and beating another man's meat?
No.
wait a minute.
no.
Wait.
Why are you? What?
I think that's called cucking, isn't it?
Why was I randomly given?
I have a friend who
banana?
actually gives lessons on how to do that.
What? Steve, can you explain this banana?
That's right,
just
Brittany
appeared in my
Simon,
head?
right?
Yes, she does. I wasn't going to mention her name unless she's whatever. But sure.
You said that on non-sequitur show. I remember that.
Oh,
I was
okay, yeah. So Brittany does the cucking.
Why? Why is this happening? Why? Ow.
So, Steve, you've become. I think we're both kind of like on the sidelines here as Suris is getting destroyed with a hammer as our
thought-
I
audience.
don't know if he's getting
thought-
destroyed or
Just
mildly turned on.
Why did we put
We might just end the
Steve-
stream and say I'll be back in a few, guys.
Why did we put Steve in the top when Pam has made me the show? God damn it!
I kind of like to be the top. But
Ow.
whatever. I just don't. This is
hurts.
weird. It's such a big head. I'm like, you guys are at high definition, like 1080, and it looks like I'm at like 480 or something with like.
To be
We're
fair,
gonna-
I'm actually only.
We're
at
still
70.
figuring out technology. It's not our thing right now.
To be
Clearly.
fair,
But-
I actually am only at 720p, but it doesn't look like it because I'm in a tiny box.
Yeah.
Oh man. So Isa says I can't hear him harder, Pam. Don't have a hammer if you don't want to get smacked. And wait, torture Suris to ruin the show. I'm in, says Godless Iowan. So we have like this. We have an onslaught now, Suris. You're screwed.
I'm aware. So apologies if there was supposed to be a direction that the show was originally intended on going in. Steve suggested
Now
we
we're
talk
just
about
hitting Suris
boobs.
with a hammer.
I guess
My camera is in high def. It just he doesn't have it at high def. That's all. I have 10. I'm running 1080p right now.
I'm actually curious as to why it doesn't show you in that.
That's on your end because I am definitely running 1080p right now.
Weird. Yeah, I don't know if there's. You'll have to tell me after the show if there's a way that I can modify that in Zoom because I can't.
There will be conversations. So
Yes.
I guess jumping back into where were we with the
Well,
non-sequitur show? About
What you do is you just make it your size. Shrink me.
Shrink you.
shrink you a little bit.
Or, yeah, we'll
That'll
do
probably
some things. We'll do some
Okay.
things.
So anyway, where were we? Jesus, we were talking about the delineations of what kind of Steve you're getting depending on the website that you're on, and you were talking about Twitter,
Mhm.
and just like that. People seem to respect you on Twitter, but also you seem to give no fucks on Twitter in a lot of these conversations. So I guess what are some of the adventures on there, like, and have you been kind of like pulling those into the non sequitur realm, or does that mainly like stick to your own channel?
I do sometimes, but mostly I'll pull them into my channel, or I'll just like ask them. Look, if you think that I'm wrong, I'm happy to have a discussion with you.
Right.
But the problem I find in Twitter is that they're so used to dealing with base level bullshit that when they run across someone like me that might be able to actually engage them in any kind of real conversation, they don't know what to do. Their minds just kind of snap and they just go into this knee-jerk defense mode, and they'll just start throwing out fallacies, right? Oh, look, Steve has appeal to authority. Oh, look, Steve has appeal to popularity. Steve strawman me. I'm like, you're getting every one of these wrong, right? I'm the one person that you really don't want to accuse of committing a fallacy unless I really actually did, right? I do happen to like fallacies and I read about them a lot. So, they have these knee-jerk reactions, and it's not just like the Joe Schmuckatellis either. I mean, Matt Bedellahunty, will comment on my thread and he'll just throw one word out there. No, you're wrong. Something like that. And I'm like, Matt.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, it's bizarre, right? Because I'm like, Matt, I think I need a little more detail. Because somebody asked me a question about multivariate logic. And my answer was, well, yeah, multivariate logic would be something like true, false, or unknown, because you don't have the principle of bivalence. And, Matt was like, no, it's not true, false, or unknown. It's if do you believe or don't believe. And I'm like, oh, Matt, I'm not talking about classical logic, dude.
I thought that you and Matt Delahunty, that was interesting that you brought that up, because someone sent me that a little while ago, actually. I thought that you and Matt Delahunty were on the same page. with that stuff.
I kind of thought we kind of were, and I talked to Alex yesterday at Malpass, and he said, well, maybe you're not giving Matt the principle of charity as much because he knows Matt pretty well, or he knows Alex pretty. He knows Matt pretty well. And he said, maybe you're just reading the way Matt's saying it wrong because Matt's position, and maybe he's just kind of having a knee-jerk kind of reaction. He probably doesn't have time to read all your posts, and he's just kind of throwing that out there for what he's used to doing with anybody else, kind of thing. And I said, yeah, you're probably right. I agree with that. I already thought about that, but
But he showed up onto the thread. Was he tagged?
Yeah, because somebody had tagged with the post. If Matt Dillahunty is the Pope of atheism, then Steve McRae is the Pope of agnosticism. And Matt's like, no one's the Pope. No, and I'm like, it's all in fun.
Doesn't he
I'll take it.
realize
I have no allegiance to any group. I'll be the Pope of agnosticism.
But to say at that point, wouldn't it be like just blatantly obvious that was all meant in jest, though?
Well, you would think so, but PZ Myers got on there too. It's like, why do people have to make such a thing in a hierarchy when atheism doesn't have any confirmed leaders or something? I'm like, PZ, come on, it's a joke, dude.
I'm going to be calling Steve the Pope of agnosticism from now on.
Yeah, and I, you know what? And I've nominated Godless Cranium. He's the Pope of anti-theism. They've already put the black smoke up.
It's a good person for that.
He's accepted that, I think.
He's accepted that this is the way things are.
It would either be Godless Cranium,
right? You can't fight destiny, man.
It would either be Godless Cranium or Nightmare Fuel, I think, would be the Pope of it.
No, Godless Cranium.
I would take Godless Cranium.
I don't have a problem with Reese. I actually like Reese. A lot of people take issue with Reese. I don't know why. I kind of think he's kind of blunt and straightforward the way I am. I may not agree with him on everything, but I like his approach.
I may not agree with a lot of Nightmare Fuel's points, but he's very concise when he's making them.
Yeah,
actually,
he's very good.
Believe it or not.
Yeah,
I don't agree with him on everything, like obviously, but fucking polytheist.
Well, that's what amazing when people say, well, you can't stand when somebody doesn't agree with you. I'm like, do they not understand that none of us would really have a show or anything if people just didn't
if I couldn't stand people
saying people that disagree.
If we couldn't stand people who disagreed with us, then one, I wouldn't have friends. Two,
the show wouldn't.
Yeah, the show literally wouldn't exist.
Yeah, you got a polytheist, atheist, and agnostic in the same room here. You think we give a shit if we all disagree? Really?
Yeah,
so
no, we definitely all hate each other because we disagree on certain fundamental things.
You two of my favorite people, and that's like Jim Hall from Atheist Edge. He's one of my favorite people too.
Oh, Jim's great.
Jim's great.
I enjoy bickering with him.
Yeah.
Every time.
I think you pulled me onto Jim's show at one point in order to talk about the thing.
Oh, was that on the Great Debate Community channel?
It was on Jim. It was on Jim's.
Was it Jim's on Atheist? Oh yeah, it was on Atheist Edge. Yeah, you're right. Right.
I think it was on Jim's channel where you were like, you sent me an invite and you were like, Ocean, come in here and explain things. And it was about definition of atheism and with regards to the whole the agnostic thing and so on, which seems to be something which we can go ahead and get into that, I guess, a little bit.
Very briefly.
That does be. We'll spend the whole show on it, I'm sure. That seems to be something that you do get into it with atheists on a lot, both on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. That there's a definition, there's a philosophical definition structure, there's a colloquial definition structure. You prefer one, and you get told that you're wrong a lot. And the conversation kind of goes from there. Talk a little bit about that, because it does seem to be a significant part of your content.
Well, the only reason it's significant is for the same reason why, Suris the skeptic is talk about atheism, right? It's a large part of his content.
Right.
I hold a specific position, and when people assume that into atheism, I'm losing my identity, right? I'm losing my position because they're saying, oh, you can't be agnostic. You have to be either atheist or theist, and that's completely nonsense.
After you get into that, we should definitely talk about the situation that happened on the Leah group.
Okay. Yeah. So basically this, I fully acknowledge there's multiple definitions. Words are useful, right? They have utility. They're polysemous, meaning that they have multiple ways they can be used, right? It's ironic that the people that say I'm wrong are the ones that don't realize that, right? Because one, they don't realize that when I'm telling them that these words are used in this context, right, in the terms of philosophy, that's what the words would mean if you're reading a philosophical paper. That's straight up fact. If I'm reading a philosophical paper and I see the word atheism, 99% of the time it's going to be a belief, right? It isn't going to be I just don't have a belief in God, except maybe if you're reading a paper like Anthony Flue's A Presumption of Atheism, and he wrote that in 1972. If you're reading something by maybe George Scott, who wrote his stuff in like 1974, there's a couple other handful that I know of, but for the most part, if you see the
is it implied in Burton Russell's definition as well?
Burton Russell's a unique case because Burton Russell recognizes that he could be agnostic or atheist depending on you're talking about local gods or global gods, right?
Okay.
He wrote a paper, he even wrote that, am I agnostic or atheist? Or am I an atheist or agnostic? But yeah, he'll take either one. I mean, he understands the difference from when he did, from what I read of him. But when people say, well, there's no middle ground, they're not understanding that agnosticism is not the middle ground between belief and not belief. Right?
It's just you're not assigning a truth value, and that's different and separate.
Yeah, you're not saying I believe X is true. I'm not believing, and you understand. You're not saying I believe X is false. You're just saying I suspend judgment on it. So they don't believe, right? Agnostics are non-believers. So when people say, "Well, you either believe or you don't believe," and agnostic can't be in the middle there, well, yeah, you're right, because they don't believe. That's why they're called non-believers. But that doesn't make them atheists. What a lot of them try to do is they just assume to say anybody who doesn't believe is an atheist, because in their colloquial definitions, that would probably be the case. I reject those colloquial definitions. So you can't say
you like actively reject them. Like you're not
actively. I full-heartedly, and there's many different reasons for that. I very a multitude of reasons. But when somebody says this statement, Ocean, if you do not believe in God, you must be an atheist.
Incorrect.
That statement is clearly false, because by holding two formal definitions, you can be theist, atheist, or many other different things. They're neither, right? So when you say must be, you're implying there's no possibility, but there is a possibility by using formal definitions.
Right.
Make sense?
But I guess that if you're going to be saying that there is a possibility using those formal definitions, you would be switching the definition from what the statement means. So I guess if the statement is saying that everybody who doesn't believe is an atheist, then they would be including everybody who doesn't believe under the definition that's being used in order to build that statement, right?
If they're working in their framework, if they said
they're using the colloquial definition,
if they said under the colloquial definition, if you do not believe in God, you must be an atheist, then I can't say that's a false statement,
right?
Because colloquially, that's where we are. But even if you look at history, there were points where Christians were called atheists for not believing in certain gods. Like sometimes it was the term colloquially has been thrown around in a multitude of different means.
That actually is an interesting thing, because it wasn't because it's just they don't believe in this extra gods. It was that the Romans considered them atheists because the Christians rejected the polytheistic deities
originally. Yes.
Yeah. So, and it was an actual rejection, rather than just simple lack of belief.
As opposed to the classical
those
theists,
gods don't exist.
As opposed to the classical
not
theism sense.
No, well, hang on. I know you're the historian, but I think this might be a little caveat. It wasn't so much that they said those gods didn't exist. Some of them might have said they existed, but they denied worship to them, because the empowerment of the gods back then got their power from the individuals. So to deny them,
or redefine them as demons or something like
that. Or whatever it might be, sure. But if they think they existed, but denying them that worship, that minimized their power, that depowered them, I guess. That was the mindset of them back then, right? If you didn't worship the Olympian gods or the Roman gods or the Greek gods, they lost their power. And so that's what it was to mean.
That's not
deny them
gods as defined by creepypastas.
We'll get into a fight on that, because that idea of the gods drawing power from worship is a much later idea that's developed. As far as that's not the historical view that they held at that point in time, but
you're the expert on that. I'll defer to you for that. For now.
But that was something that wound up developing a little bit later, as far as like in retrospect, the conversation of what maybe they believed or something like that. But it wasn't. I've had a conversation with E.P. Butler on this, a PhD in polytheism, or PhD in philosophy that advocates for polytheism, on that, where he was like, no, this isn't. That never happened. It wasn't a thing. Mm-hmm. But anywho, but it is true that Christians were like that they rejected, or they were like denied work or something like that to call them demons and these kind of things.
Yes.
I
agree with
and
that.
we're called atheists for it because of that stance. So the word atheist has like this long history of applying to a number of things, including Christians. So, and actually, the guy that I mentioned earlier, E.P. Butler, says that the difference between Christians and atheists is minimal to him. So that's another funny thing that he even still applies. Thinks the word atheist kind of applies to Christians in an interesting way. It's similar to how the Romans saw it.
Mm-hmm.
Swinging by on that, I don't want to get into that too much, but the definition that you're using, and so you're rejecting the lack of definition, like actively in conversation.
Yeah, because I think it has
like you won't have a conversation with it.
No. Look at if somebody is
me and Steve have had conversations with it.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody wants to adhere to those definitions, I'm still going to call them an atheist. I know what they mean by it. It doesn't change anything. As long as as long as they understand that I am not an atheist, I don't give a shit what the hell they call themselves. Right? It makes no difference to me.
It's basically just boils down to call yourself what you want as long as you have a reason for it. I have a reason for calling myself
like having a conversation about atheism using those definitions. Is that something
I've done?
Not interested in doing? Okay.
Well, yeah, but like I said, when you have conversations with those types of definitions, they lead to complications and absurdities and what I think to be a contradiction, because if you're going to hold to the position that atheism is merely a lack of belief, then I have yet to have somebody resolve the fact that a theological non-cognitivist doesn't believe in God, but that is a non-cognitivist position. So how do you assume that into atheism when atheism is a cognitive group, right? So you're taking a cognitive set, which would be atheism, and you're sticking in something that is a non-cognitivist position. I have yet to have a single atheist explain that one to me. Nobody has.
It's like trying to say that you have an objective moral framework, but you're also a moral non-cog.
Yeah,
it's kind of nonsense at that point.
Yeah, it's like saying you're a moral non-cognitivist objective realist.
Yeah, those things, for those who haven't read up on this, those things don't go together the way that they did in that sentence.
Yeah, and so you can't be a moral realist and then say you're a moral non-cognitivist. That just
I see. That's interesting.
Speaking of sentences that don't go together very well, today and yesterday, for people who are not part of the Leah group, there's I don't want to mention the individual by name, but
what's the Leah group?
It's a group that's called League of Extraordinary Atheists for Humanism. For some reason Steve's in there. I don't know why.
I'm in a lot of groups, dude. I don't even know who started that group.
Atheists are fucking weird.
We are. But there was a person in the group who joined and then immediately started this tirade against agnostics as soon as he came in.
Was it similar to Richard Dawkins' tirade against agnostics?
No, this is way worse. This guy, if you look at his...
Because he has... there's a chapter, I think, in God Delusion.
Yeah, I
rants against agnostics. Yeah.
No,
I'm going to read that. I'm actually going to read that one of these days. I've heard of it, but I didn't read it from Dawkins.
It was one of the first atheism books that I read.
It's an okay book if you read it just in its own right. But if you try to read it if you read it with the context that it was trying to change anybody's positions, it doesn't do a great job.
This guy had been ranting against agnosticism for 5 years, I found out.
Yes, you and I both probably did the same thing. We looked at his profile and saw his older posts, and they're all the same thing. It's like he just wakes up and goes, "Those freaking agnostics!"
And he gets it so fundamentally wrong.
So what was the content of this rant?
It began with him making a post saying, "This quote is the Achilles heel of agnosticism. Huxley wants atheists to show empirical evidence or negative proof that God does not exist, after telling us agnostic is a method. Thomas Huxley wrote, quote, and negatively, in matters of the intellect, do not pretend that conclusions are certain, which are not demonstrated to be demonstrable," end quote. It is the theist who has the burden of proof. The atheist need not disprove imaginary friends of those voices in your head. So looking at Ocean's face, I can already see that he's just watching the straw man be built throughout this entire thing.
I see that happening.
So many things wrong with that. It's just
Let's go ahead and break it down for us, Steve. Like, what's
okay. So there's a couple of different things that he gets into in that post and others where he goes astray. And first of all, Thomas Huxley did invent the word agnosticism, and it is a methodology the way he designed it. However, that doesn't preclude or exclude the fact that, like, towards a proposition, you could be agnostic toward a proposition. You just suspend judgment. That follows in line with Huxley's understanding of the word, right? That's how he coined it. That he doesn't think that anybody is justified to say they're theist or atheist. He doesn't think that there's enough evidence either way, and that there's no justificatory conditions by which you can take a position. But this guy thinks that somehow that somehow eliminates the agnostic position, because he thinks that agnosticism and theism is a dichotomy. Well, it's not a dichotomy. It is an artificial dichotomy, if anything, because people are saying, well, you have to be one or the other. Well, that's not true, as I pointed out.
Us versus them is cult mentality. Stop.
Yeah, and we've all corrected him, and yet people have asked him, hey, look, Steve laid this out for you. He showed you the logic. He showed you the diagram, showed you everything. Are you going to address it? And he just starts ranting more, and they're like, oh, this guy's not seriously trying to have a conversation at this point. So.
Even Godless Iowan got on there and was just like, look, Steve's laid this out, Snarky's laid this out, Suris has laid this out, I've laid this out, you're an idiot. I actually invited him to come on to one of my live shows just to explain his position and see if maybe we could suss it out, but the guy just, instead of saying yes or no to that, he spent the entire time just yelling at me. And I'm just like, never mind.
Somebody had mentioned that atheism is not a cognitive position. Well, yeah, it absolutely is, because cognitivism means that you can assign a truth value or it has propositional value of some sort. And so if I can say that weak atheism is not BP, I do not believe P, clearly it's cognitive, right? So if a non-cognitivist position would say there's no such proposition as one God exists, right? They would say if you're the way I relate it to maybe like moral,
like the babies are atheists thing, or rocks are atheists. Like if you're holding that it's a non-cognitive position, then rocks.
No, that's not what it means.
No. Okay,
but it doesn't have to do with cognitive meaning.
A rock can't even be a non-cog, because to be a non-cog first,
like
agent,
okay, you're talking about like
what a non-cognitivist means.
You're talking about like in that it's not a position that's cognitive.
That's not what it means. A non-cognitivist, for example, a moral non-cognitivist, if you told them stealing is wrong, that to me is a proposition. It could be true or false, right? Stealing is wrong.
Non-cognitivists don't think that moral.
They won't say that's a proposition. The moral non-cognitivists will say boo stealing. If they're an emotivist, they'll be like stealing, boo. Prescriptivist would be like stealing is bad, don't steal. So prescriptivist thinks that proposition is not a proposition. That this is a declaration to mean don't do this, right? So the non-cognitivist does not think that that's a proposition. So atheism is a cognitivist position because it's saying I don't believe the proposition. So obviously it acknowledges that it's propositional, so it has to be a cognitive position. Okay,
that's okay. I didn't think of it that way, but that's okay. Cool.
That's what it means.
It's when a non-cognitivist to me, I haven't really talked to very many non-cognitivists. I think that the only one that I've talked to before was Kevin, and that was years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But he was just saying he's a non-cognitivist, and it didn't really participate in the conversation much beyond that. So I haven't really had much experience with the position, but I always thought that
express it propositionally, it's cognitive, right? If I say not BP, I don't.
They didn't understand.
Right,
what I understood was they didn't understand what the definition of the word God. That there wasn't.
That's a different type of cognitivism. That's
okay,
right? That means cognitively meaningful, right?
Okay.
The word is not cognitively meaningful because it doesn't relate to anything. Either ontologically or towards an object. Usually you have a reference and a referent, right? I say that here's my concept, here's my object. Well, to a ichtheist or agnosticist, they would say that I don't understand what you're saying because with the word you're using has no meaning to me, no cognitive meaning, because it doesn't relate to anything which I can say has any ontological meaning, right? If I just made up some word and you never heard of this word before, it has no cognitive meaning for you. You don't relate it to anything. So how could you talk about it, right? That's what a true ichtheist is.
Got it.
It's always weird whenever you ask an ichtheist or most non-cogs, because this is what happens with R and Raw a lot too. Is they'll ask, well, what's your definition of God? And Aaron has it's this type of anthropomorphic thing. But a non-cog will just, for the sake of conversation, generally have to accept your definition of a God for the sake of the conversation. Because to them it doesn't have meaning inherent to itself.
Why are you putting the burden on the non-cog to provide a definition of something that they don't think is cognitive?
Yeah.
They don't think it is coherent. So, yeah. So let's go a little bit into, so you identify as an agnostic, Steve.
You got to figure that out by now, have you, Ocean?
Right. I think.
Holy shit, Steve's agnostic. I thought he was a Christian.
Sure
Shocker.
that's the thing. So, but I do want to ask you a little bit about like why you consider yourself an agnostic, because I don't think that's something that I think you've brought up a couple of times, but we haven't. It's not something that is regularly discussed.
Well, the simple reason.
Why are you in that particular position?
Yeah, the simple reason I would give the explanation for what's called evidential agnosticism, which I'm not. Well, technically I'm not. I'm what's called a zero data agnostic or temporal agnostic, but they're all kind of similar. But the way an evidential agnostic would say would be, there's no convincing evidence either way to which I can justify forming a belief one way or the other. So I don't hold there's enough information. This is why it's called zero data. There's not enough information to say I believe that there's a God, and there's not enough information to say I believe there isn't a God. So I suspend judgment on it. Now I do think there's reasoned arguments to be had either way. I've gone on record and said I think the atheist arguments are slightly stronger. I don't find the theist arguments to be very compelling. They do exist though. When people say there's no evidence for God, they seem to glaze over any kind of rational argumentation, and I don't get that. I think that's very disingenuous, right? Because they're just strictly talking from an empirical type sense. They're talking from almost from a logical positivist position. And I have met a lot of logical positivists, and I'm not. I think it's an absurd position. I reject it outright. It hasn't been a viable position since the 1800s or 1900s with the Vienna Circle. So this is something that has been phased out because we have what's called scientific methodology now, and scientific methodology is much, much more precise and better than logical positivism. So what's
the problem with logical positive? I think a lot of atheists wind up falling into that,
because the logical positive basically says that it doesn't have any cognitive meaning to anything unless you can show something to be demonstrably true by evidence, by empiricism. Right. And then a verification of that principle would be that it has to be true or false. So something doesn't have cognitive meaning unless it's true or false. So they kind of go hand in hand. So logical positivists would say that you have to have empirical data. You have to have empiricism. It kind of shits all over rationalism, right? And the theist will say, hey, I'm positing an argument. Here's my argument using like Thomas Aquinas' 5 ways, right? So argument from motion, argument from contingency, first cause. And somebody will say, well, that's not evidence. Well, yeah, it is evidence. You can consider it weak evidence. You can reject it and say it's bad evidence. But this is the evidence they're using. They're using reasoned argumentation. That's a form of evidence. When I write a proof, when I write a logical argument, that, I'm sorry, is a form of evidence that I'm positing to be evaluated.
So you might disagree with the mantra of there's no evidence for God?
I disagree with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's no physical evidence. I'm going to agree with that. There's no empirical.
I think the best way to say that would be there's no empirical evidence.
That's what I just said. Thank you.
Yeah. If there's no empirical evidence, then that's fine. But you just say there's no evidence. That's maybe a bit disingenuous because you're smuggling in the empiricism without actually flat out saying it.
Yeah, and when these atheists that adhere to science to the rigidity that they do, they miss out on a lot of understanding of their arguments, because when a theist runs a rational argument that is valid, may not be sound. I don't think any of them are sound per se, right? But if they are, no big deal. They're not
unless you have like external, just like that's you run into. I think it was Hobbes has the problem of phenomenological versus noumenal.
Yeah,
where the phenomenological is going to be your experience. So all of our whether or not something is sound is you're going to have to somehow validate the noumenal, which would be
I totally agree with that.
Outside of your experience. So
which is difficult to do. I mean, first of all,
he said it was impossible.
I don't see how one actually does that because of epistemic limits. And finding out what the noumenon actually is to me just how would you do that, right? Where do you begin? The only thing we understand is through our senses, right? The only thing we have is phenomenology. So we have to look upon the world and say, this is our understanding of it. This is our map of the territory, right?
Well, there is something we do understand, though, Steve. According to Zero, who just did a $2 super chat, Steve is a secret Muslim, and that's what agnostic truly means.
Assalamu alaikum. Malaikum assalam, Zero.
Wassalamu alaikum.
So yeah, I don't see how we would actually ever see the territory. What actually is the noumenon, the Kant's in of itself thing, right? What does that mean? What is the native properties? What is the naive realism? These are all concepts that yeah, I understand the concept, but that doesn't mean I understand what that would actually entail. So yeah, it's just one of those things that yeah, I think it's very difficult for
Like,
us.
does that line between like the inaccessibility of the noumena kind of lock you into a agnostic position?
Yeah, in a way, it kind of does, and I think that's a really good way of putting it, because I don't know what the noumenon actually is, right? I think there's an argument to be had. There's so much epistemic limits we have, and this is not a God in the gap. So I'm not positing, okay, we have a limitation in our knowledge, and science can't address the God claim, therefore God. But I'm fully aware there is information that is outside our epistemic limits that we'll never be privy to, and in all reasoning, I don't think we can ever be privy to. And in that epistemic limit, there might be something that is just beyond our comprehension, whether you call it a God, whether you call it a matrix, whether you call it something that is beyond what we can physically have access to, conceptually or mentally or physically, then yeah, I'm kind of stuck on that agnostic. And it's not that much different from a weak atheist, right? Logically they're the same. But when a weak atheist tells me, well, Steve, I don't have enough evidence to be a believer, okay, then why is that any different than what I'm telling you? We are in the same position. There's no difference between a weak atheist and agnostic if you're doing it by logic. Epistemically, there's a huge difference, though.
What's the difference epistemically?
Well, let me use an analogy. Let's say you have a Christian and a Jew, right? They're both theist, right? But there's obviously epistemic differences, things that they believe and think they know to be
I see.
true, right? So the same thing with the agnostic and a weak atheist. The weak atheist generally will just say, I don't believe the theist, but they never seem to acknowledge they don't believe the atheist either, the hard atheist or the philosophical atheist, right? They don't evaluate either proposition. They suspend judgment on the proposition that theism is true, and they suspend proposition on the proposition that atheism is true. And epistemically, the agnostic realizes that. Right?
I haven't thought about that. I rarely see like the weak atheists and the strong atheists get into arguments with each other. Because like you would think that the weak atheist, your definition of agnostic would take just as much objection to a theist as they would to a strong atheist. That they're holding to a position, because I have seen that comment from atheists occasionally, that saying that there is no God is just as ridiculous as saying that there is one. But I've rarely see like an actual debate on that issue from between strong atheists.
You've heard the thing that agnostics are fence sitters. We're so weak atheists. I hate to break it to you. They're the exact same.
In the same way,
it's the same fence. It's the same fence they're sitting on. The only difference between an atheist, a weak atheist, and agnostic is that they both are on the same fence, but the agnostic is looking both ways, and the weak atheist is only looking one. They're only looking to the side, they're saying, okay, yeah, they're just saying, look, I don't believe this, but the agnostic says, look, I don't believe either one. Is that good? That's really good with my diagram.
Yeah, I like that.
Especially with the diagram behind you showing the two sides.
Right. Yeah, so they're not understanding. If the people might listen to this on the podcast later, they're not going to see the graphic. But I got heaven and hell. So,
right.
Or as Ocean said, California.
Oh gods.
Before. After.
So we have a super chat from John DeTrees.
I didn't say that.
I'm hoping that you have to do it with the hammer. If you're going to do it, you have to do it with the hammer. You do. Wherever you put it. And if you lost the hammer, that's on you.
Here,
but he said, is he able but not willing? Then he is malevolent. Is he both able and willing? Then whence cometh evil? Is he neither able nor willing? Then I am an atheist.
Well, so that's actually the logical problem of evil.
Yeah, let's go into that. What do you think of the logical problem of evil? Is that something that you fit into your reasoning for your position, or is that...
I think Steve's more evidential than logical.
Right.
Well, I've actually done videos on both. And the way I basically say is this: the logical problem of evil is a lot more narrow in scope. It only affects the omni God, right? The one that's all powerful, all benevolent, all knowing. And really, you can kind of distill it down to two. I think it was Epicurus who actually first came out with the logical problem of evil. He only had two omnis, but if you really want to, use the Christian God, that where they posit three omnis, it is logically inconsistent to have all those properties at the same time. And a logically inconsistent system is a system that all propositions cannot be true simultaneously. So the logical problem of evil is a very powerful argument against a very specific type of deity. So it's very, very strong, but very, very narrow in scope.
And all they have to do is just posit a different type of deity, and the problem starts to fall apart a bit.
Right.
But we do have a $2 super chat from Godless Iowan saying that he gets crap for being a strong atheist a lot.
I thought he got crap for all the butt stuff. That's what he got crap for.
Wow.
He does a lot of butt stuff. I found
he just has a bad choice in peanut butter. Did you?
It's true. He does.
Do you? You get crap from strong atheists a lot, I imagine, Steve. And do you give crap to strong atheists for their position?
And let me finish the. I think it's kind of important.
Yeah.
The evidential problem of evil is a lot more wide in scope. It's broad, but much less powerful. So there's a reason why I like both, and they are different. But anyways, the strong atheist, not so much, because the strong atheist I know understand the differences. Like Lucifer Almighty is a strong atheist, and he completely agrees with me because he understands the topic. Most strong atheists I know, they're kind of going to be agree with me because they want people to take that position, right? They want people to recognize that they merely don't lack a belief, and some of them actually do believe, right? Because I have noticed, and Ocean's, I've known for a fact seen it, we have seen people in real time say things like, well, I just merely lack a belief, but there are no gods. Or I just merely lack a belief.
That doesn't make sense. If you're going to take the lack of belief position, that's fine. But you can't then assert there are no gods. You've smuggled in strong atheism.
But it's awesome when they do it. It happens frequently when people say, I merely lack a belief, but you know what? Everything's natural. Oh, I'm an ontological naturalist.
Follow it up with the claim.
Right, exactly. And then you call them out on it, and you'll say, look, if you're an ontological naturalist, you have to hold to strong atheism to be rational. Well, how does that follow? Well, how does it not follow? You're claiming there's no such thing as supernatural, meaning by entailment, there's no such thing as a supernatural entity, which would be including deities.
Without a deity, whence cometh the supernatural? You have to stick where you've placed yourself at that point.
Oh, Lucifer Almighty's in the live chat. He heard me talk nice about him. I'm not going to live that freaking down.
we have another super chat.
Won't happen again, Lucifer. I promise.
We have another super chat from Stephen Bauman saying, "Peter Pan, you fools! Here's my wrench." But he did the super chat for $3.99, so I would imagine that means that he only gets me hit 3 times, and then if somebody else wants to make up the change, then there'll be another hit in there somewhere.
Oh no, there's been previous donations with 2 or 3 cents in them. 2 or 3
cents. Okay, so
you get that 4th hit.
You get the 4th hit. Again, I'll just have to let Pam know to hit me with the hammer again once she gets out of the bathroom, because apparently that's what's happening today. This is the.
Yep.
You realize I'm going to have a sore shoulder tomorrow, right?
Sure. So I guess trying to think with Steve, as far as if you're agnostic and you're sitting kind of in the middle. So, and I have a similar experience to that, being polytheist, of not being atheist, not being Christian, and seeing a lot of the fighting going on between them. Does it feel the same way to you, that you're like a third side almost? Oh yeah,
because we don't have to, because we're in a unique position. We're in a very higher epistemic vantage point. We don't have to hold to any kind of tribalism. And in fact, somebody the other day was like, "Well, Steve, don't you think you're hurting atheism by pointing these stuffs out?"
But
I'm like,
you
"No,
don't
it's true."
care.
I'm like, "Wait a minute. If I'm pointing out stuff that you even agree with me with, you're saying yes, Steve, that all makes sense, and you're rational, and you definitely have a consistent, logical, reasonable argument, but it's hurting atheism. Then don't you see a problem with that statement? Then maybe you should correct the things and not be saying some like the opposite."
At that point, you can't just say you're wrong because of an appeal to tribalism. That doesn't work.
Exactly.
That's kind of weird that that's happening.
Does it really surprise you?
Well, I mean, it doesn't because of like human behavior, I guess, but it does that because there's the stated position that I usually find with atheists is saying that, well, no, we're interested in the truth. And that one of their criticisms of religion and religious people is that they tend to be afraid of criticism, or that they can't handle criticism, or that when you ask questions, they freak out. But when you wind up with criticisms of atheism from an agnostic, you get the same sort of behavior of like, no, don't threaten the unity. Don't we're on the same side here. Why are you doing this now? And then you get that freaking out from criticism, that why are you asking questions? Why are you putting forward this criticism? We can't handle it, kind of thing. That it seems hypocritical.
We're on the same side as far as
not hypocritical, but disingenuous.
Like, we can be on the same side as far as humanism is concerned.
It's inconsistent.
As soon as you start saying things that are patently wrong, then, I mean, you're going to get corrected.
But they don't want to be corrected, sirs, and that's the thing. I mean, look at a lot of atheists out there. All they want to do is, if they think that you're wrong, they'll throw up a meme, right? Oh, look at this meme, you're wrong. And half the time the memes are wrong, right? I'm going to tell you guys over and over and over again.
The four panels.
Yeah, well, that's one of them. If you
or agnostic atheism and all that stuff.
If you're one of those atheists and you're throwing up a multi-axial thing that has theist and non-theist and atheist and gnostic and agnostic, you're already, in my opinion, you haven't read a book on epistemology. You're just done. You're literally at base level, because anybody who's ever looked at these things can understand that there's problems with every one of these multi-axial approaches. So I just reject them. But the other things was, like, I've told people, look, I've seen a meme the other day that said something along the lines of, I don't have to disprove your God until you prove your God exists. And the person who put that meme there clearly didn't understand how proofs work.
I remember that one.
Yeah, because if you prove God exists, whichever that would mean, right? Because I don't prove existential things. But if I actually could prove God exists, game over, buddy. Game over. There is no disproving. You cannot disprove a proof. Once something is proven in perpetuity, forever and ever and ever. You can never ever disprove a proof. So why would you want to say to somebody, we have nothing to disprove until you prove it? No, I can only disprove you until it's proven. Huge difference, right? So they want to argue by memes, or they just want to, like, by fiat say you're wrong, or just throw something out and say, like, oh, look what Matt Dillahunty said in 2012. Okay, well, here's what he said in 2017. And, I love Matt Dillahunty. I watched the Atheist Experience. He's not always right. Hate to break it to you. He's really
actually had a video.
He's got better now. He's got real much better. I'm hugely impressed with the amount of philosophy he's learned over the years.
He's had a video with Rationality Rules where even Steven called him out on one thing that he got wrong, and they just had to, like, sit together and chat. And
I watched it, and
you're right.
I agree with Rationality Rules. Yeah, that was on the will and the free will argument. And I agree with Stephen on that, is that I do call it the will. And, people may not know this, but Rationality Rules has messaged me many times asking me my opinion on things. So, I mean, and he's one of the most competent people that I know. But he actually will say, Steve, what do you think about this? I'm doing a video about this. What's your input? So whether he agrees with me or disagrees with me, I think he respects me enough to at least maybe get my opinion on something and then run with it one way or another. And I think it's brilliant. I think it's absolutely brilliant.
I'd like to point out that Mrs. Snarky says that Suris both accepts the weak atheist position and likes weak peanut butter. That is a lie. That is definitely, most certainly, a lie.
When is the mayo versus mustard thing going to happen?
You need to find somebody who actually cares enough about that debate, because peanut butter is serious.
Oh, like
business.
Peanut butters really give a shit about. Okay.
Hey, I drove to Iowa to beat Iowan for peanut butter.
And Goddess Iowan, I love you, dude. I love you, brother. I really do. Do me a favor. Go take an acting lesson.
Oh. What was that noise?
Watch this. He's gonna make 5 fucking videos about me now.
There's gonna be 5 videos where he just, like, his acting gets progressively better throughout each and every one of them. The burn was bad. I'm gonna be receiving Twitter DMs now for just like, Suris, drive to Iowa. We need to do a skit now.
We're gonna go to the fucking. That's funny.
You know what I have noticed? In the skeptic community, there's a lot more camaraderie than it was like 5 years ago or something like that, right? The old schoolers that have been around.
People were tearing each other apart.
Yeah, it was vicious, right? Exactly, yeah. Right? You remember those days. And I'm so glad that nowadays people can take a fucking joke. And we have these kind of things where we poke and prod and nobody takes it seriously. That's what makes a strong community. People poke and prod me all the time and not the ways I like. But at least I don't get I'm like, I have a very thick skin. I'm like, I enjoy it. I think if somebody goes out of the way to make a video about me, to diss me, I'm thrilled to death, right? I'm like, whether it's a joke or not, I don't care. I'm like, that's cool. They took time. Sure.
I've noticed this as well with my experience in the great debate community, that, or the, like, even like the greater YouTube uh like religious debate sphere, I guess, that when about 5 years ago, when I was like jumping around and like showing up on Nadia's channel, showing up on your channel, um that, there was a lot of pushback against me, like particularly pretty heavily. But now, it seems like this conversation's been going on for long enough time that there's people like Mr. Atheist, Suris, and a few others that are familiar enough with me that it's like, no, we acknowledge that some disagreements, but we have respect for one another, and we can banter a little bit and retain a friendship, even in spite, like even in the face of this disagreement, and that it doesn't have to be like drawing the lines of tribal sides, that we can cooperate, go on each other's channels, and all this other kind of stuff.
Well, it's like when you have it's a lot like the conversation with morality, right? Whenever somebody says that morality has to be one certain way, and you say, well, regardless of what end of the spectrum morality falls on, we all find ourselves in a situation where we have to coexist. It's a lot like that. Yeah. It's a lot like what happens there when you realize that, yes, some people don't have all the same agreements, but they don't have to, because we no less find ourselves in a situation where we all have to coexist, and we have to find ways to do that. And that's where humanism comes in and says, hey, by the way, we are all kind of just evolved monkeys, and we'd like to live. So,
well, look how many people I've had on my channel that I have the utmost respect for. General Han Solo is a theist, right?
Yeah.
I love,
he's a good friend.
Yeah, well. I mean, he's great. I love him. And you got Hunter, you've got Sygart, you've got a whole bunch of people that are theists I have the utmost respect for. Why would I not want to have conversations with those types of people, right? But I'd rather have like Sygart to have a conversation with than I would like Kent Hovind, right? Because Sygart is honest, he believes it, and he wants to have a dialogue. Kent Hovind is after one thing. He just wants to bullshit.
He wants more people.
He's got a script that he's reading. But as far as like the camaraderie thing as well, what I'll say, like for me, I'm still an other, and I still get like some pushback, and I think that the same is true probably to a little bit lesser degry for you.
But do you think that has such a side as in a good way though? I mean, it's giving you a unique position, because no offense, atheism, you're a dime a dozen. Hey, no, there's an atheist channel on YouTube. Oh, goody.
I think I've said in a couple of conversations recently, because there was an issue about someone challenging me to a debate and saying they wanted to do a 2v2. And it's like, I'm kind of the only polytheist that engages in this kind of stuff. Like there's, so I mean, there might be a few others, but in this scene, it's been pretty much me.
As others, so, I mean, as religious others, most polytheists pretty much just want to be left well alone because of the pushback from the hyper-Christian community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and honestly, from the hyper-atheist community, a lot of the polytheists that I know, a lot of the pushback that it's different when you have polytheists in the country versus polytheists in the city. Polytheists in the city have problems with atheists. Polytheists in the country have problems with Christians. And it just depends on where you live. There's more of this other thing that treats you in a certain way, and I think that might kind of like ring true a little bit for you as well, Steve, is from the position of agnostic, that like if you're among Christians, they're going to be giving you shit for one thing. When you're among atheists, they're giving you shit for this other thing. Does that seem like it's
yeah, but I mean, I've actually found like most Christians will say, hey, Steve, your position is actually admirable. They find me to be less of an adversarial thing than somebody who is a weak atheist who just sits there and says, well, I don't believe you, I don't believe you, I don't believe you, I don't believe you, I don't believe you.
At that point,
I understand that I can defend my position, and there's actually a conversation to be had there.
Right. And like I've found similarly more sometimes with Christians, and so like Hunter and General Han Solo, like I get along with those guys really well, and they have a similar kind of attitude of like, well, your position's, it's well thought out. And then with some atheists, you'll get a similar sort of response from them after a certain amount of interaction with them. And so
after they try killing you with the pitchforks, right?
Well, yeah, but you also have an advantage because you're not an idiot, right? I mean, so you hold a position, but you're also if you're an idiot, think about that. I mean, if you were like the Kent Hovind of polytheism, then yeah, you would get shit on.
Right, that would be
you were well educated and you're able to
with some broccoli.
Yeah, but he could talk about the position. He's actually articulate in explaining his position, and you have to be educated to do that. And so, people are either enthralled by that, or they're turned off by that if they don't know the
Right.
arguments, right? Some of them are just like this, Ocean's just, bloviating or talking out his ass or whatever. And yet when you go look what Ocean tells people, except for his own, what I would say, personal viewpoints, he's usually pretty right. I mean, he knows his shit, right? So they just kind of discounted, oh, well, he's a polytheist, so he has to be wrong on his history. Well, no, he actually is educated in that topic.
Cough,
so.
cough. Genetic fallacy. Cough, cough, cough.
I remember you going nuts when it came to, what was it, Justin, what the hell's his name?
John Brister?
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
on your channel?
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, that there's been have you seen the I didn't want to bring this up, but
we got to take down him on Sunday, and I don't even remember his name. That's how little I've cared about.
Right. I know Kyle wants me to jump on for that, and it's interesting.
That was a secret.
Well, hey, but
he wants you to jump on a lot of things, actually, but that's not.
Oh man,
Kyle wants to know exactly how scratchy the beard is. Intimately know.
I'm gonna just walk away. But so.
Oh, it chafes. Oh, right down below.
But yeah. So what happened with that is he challenged me to a 2 versus 2 on polytheism versus Christianity. It was a very general topic, like, polytheism versus Christianity. We're gonna have this debate now, and I was like, and he wanted to have it on this particular channel, which is run by a Christian guy, good enough guy, good channel. But I was like, no, I don't. There's not very many other polytheists, so I'm not going to do a 2v2. What I'll do is I'll say, let's do a 1v1, and I'll up the venue. We'll do non-sequitur show. Non-sequitur has how many subscribers do you have now?
Over 16.5K.
Yeah, so 16,000, and which is bigger than the venue that he had originally put forward. And it said we'll do a 1v1, and we'll handle a resolve, which will be, I'll say that polytheism is more rational than Christianity, and we'll have that debate, and I'll go first. You'll have the last word. And he called that cowardice.
And then blocked you.
And then blocked me.
Well, because he for one thing, he wouldn't have any idea to even defend against your attacks, because I think he's all scripted, right? He's rote memorization, if anything. He's not able to formulate cogent thoughts on the fly. And unfortunately, when you're in a situation like we have dialogues with the people, and you're in a real-time interlocutor one-on-one situation, or a 2-on-2 in your case, you have to be able to think for yourself. You can't just parrot stuff you actually knew. You have to be able to analyze what's being told to you.
I think especially in a
good rejoinder. He can't do that. Right.
Well, I think that like with a 1v1, like 2v2, you get a mental break. And I prefer
structure.
debate structure. Yeah, if you have a debate structure of 2 versus 2, there is a mental break in between. Well, you got somebody else that's coming in for you, or it's on your side making these points, and then you get that break to kind of analyze and think about things, and then jump back in. With 1v1, you don't have that. You have to be on the mark throughout the entire thing, and it can be a long time. Like if you're trying to do it on non-sequitur show, like with me and Eric Murphy on your show, that was like an hour and a half of hard questions. So you have to be able to do that kind of thing. It's not easy.
Well, the 2x2, you also you if you don't know something, you're hoping that the other person does.
Your other guy does, yeah.
Right. So you both bring information to the table, right?
Right.
And I think that makes a huge difference, because a lot of shit I don't know about. If somebody starts asking me crap about the Bible, so I'm going to be deferring to somebody else. I'm not going to have the skill set to really dive into that.
Well, it's the same thing with me with evolution. Like, I can give you base stuff on the theory of evolution, but I can't give you the amount of information that Sygart would be able to give you. I wouldn't be able to give you the amount of information that Dawkins would be able to give you. I wouldn't be able to give you the information that people who just have a bachelor's in it would be able to give you.
You wouldn't be able to give me the information that G-Man could give me.
I can give you the information that G-Man can give you, but that's because I can give it from the same place, right out my asshole.
Yeah, there you go. Here you go. Hey, dog, dog.
But for that, I'll defer to somebody else who knows more on a topic, because it's honestly better to at that point. I could either talk out of my ass, or I could grab somebody who knows what they're talking about to make an actual cogent point where I can't.
I did that the other day with Jackson Wheat, right? I brought him along because I knew that some of it was going to get involved with some technical stuff with evolution that I would be way out of my depths on. And he's just able to rattle that stuff off, right? But see, one of the things about being in this type of community is if you're smart, you know when you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You know
Right.
when you just say, you know what, I'm going to shut the fuck up and I'm going to let somebody else handle this, who does know what they're talking about. And I see a lot of people that have not developed that skill set at all. They don't get it. I'm going to let Jackson. If you want to talk about phylogeny, I'm not your guy. Talk to
Also,
Jackson.
you get. I think you get more respect in this community as well when you stick to your strengths, and like if you stay away from talking about what you don't fucking know anything about. Because I've made that mistake a couple of times in this scene where I've started talking about something that I had some basic opinions on and a little bit of knowledge on, but it's not something that I know very well. And then you get called out, and it's like, no, well, there's something here that you fucked up on.
Well, when you've got two laymen that are arguing over something that neither of them know, where can you actually go at the end of it?
Well,
I don't mind that. I don't mind that. Right. I mean, none of us are experts in any specific thing, but we have a general overview, and we all have enough experts around us. But if we say something that's wrong, we're going to be corrected by the experts. It happens, right?
I have an email from Aaron Raw correcting me on one of my videos. I know how it feels to be sat down.
Really?
Yes, I
That's
do. I know how it feels to be sat down and be told, "Hey, this
was it on?
Did he school you?
Was it on Evolution?
Yes, it was on Evolution, but it's a video that I made a while back called "What's the Harm." I had talked about Dr. Leonard Bailey, who was the heart surgeon involved in the baby Faye incident, where the baby had a transplant and he had a choice between using one of two monkeys, and people thought that he chose the wrong heart, but he did what he could to save the baby. I made the point that if he had used the other one, because he'd made some claims about, or he made some statements in a few books about he chose a choice that he did because it would confirm evolution to him if he made that choice and it worked, so he didn't. I heard that, found the books where it was from, linked the books where I had found it for that information, made that point, and then a little later on had an email from Aaron Raw, and the email stated, "I've made that point before and been corrected by a creationist. You might want to redact that."
You know, and I will tell you from experience, Aaron will correct his shit. If you can really demonstrate to him that he was wrong, he will correct it. I mean, he's not bullshitting about that.
Unless it's on philosophy.
Then you're screwed. You forget it. But I'm talking about evolution or anything like that. I mean, he has changed. You know, he used to think that humans were monkeys. He's changed his position on that. And then, like, well, even still, like, we had a show. And I didn't correct him on air, and I regret it now because he even told me, he said, "Steve, I wish you would have said that when we were live, because you know now that I'm aware of this and found out you're correct, I won't be using that again. And I want people to be aware of that." And so I made a mistake. I should have corrected him when we were live. But people always say, "Well, why are you correcting people?"
To do that, like a lot of people.
Well, let me finish the reason because you're like this reason why I corrected him on. But a lot of people are like, why are you correcting people? Because if you correct them afterwards, then people don't realize that the person was wrong.
Yes.
But what I corrected him was on, he was making the arguments about Horus and Jesus and Osiris.
Oh, the zeitgeist arguments.
And the zeitgeist type things, right? And December 25th and all that kind of stuff.
My top.
And I told him, I said,
that's like my thing.
Yeah, no, and I know, but I explained to him that why these things were not correct, where it came from, and I was off air and I in detailed, and he, you know, he was looking up and whatever, and he was like, you know what, yeah, I think you're right, and he has not used that argument since, right? Because he will take information and will correct himself on it. But yeah, I know that's one of your pet peeves because you know that whole thing is bullshit from start to finish.
I even know, like,
I actually showed
it's from a researcher in the, I want to say early 1900s, maybe late 1800s, where you know, the point that he was trying to do is disprove Christianity, but I mean, and I forget the author's name, but the zeitgeist thing that you see is all based on this guy's work. That
and it has no peer review.
But it was
the fact.
And he made up like half of it, if not more.
But see, this is when an atheist says, "Well, why are you helping out the theist? Why are you arguing against this? You know, you sound like a theist arguing right now because it's wrong."
Right, and here's the thing:
simple as that.
I've gotten this from pagans every once in a while too, where I've heard that I'm not like, you know, polytheists bump into that meme a lot, and it does piss us off. But I've talked to a couple of guys that were like, yeah, I saw that meme as a Christian, and, you know, it bothered me as a Christian. And then as a pagan, I started looking into it and found out that it was wrong. Or as an atheist, they were looking into it and found out that it was wrong. And then they were mad at it, that they had been swindled out of their faith position on a just
Based
a
on
lie. At which
Yeah.
point, and when you have like, sometimes you have that realization as a Christian, and you're like, well, this is such, this stuff never happened or whatever, and then you feel lied to, and then when you get that from the information that caused you to leave the faith, it's like, no, I was lied. You have that realization a second time.
Fooled me
And
twice.
it's around your being an atheist.
That's why I tell people stop using dishonest arguments. Like, for example, Lucifer just said he's been called a theist and banned from atheist things from pointing out bad arguments, and it has happened. He got banned from the Atheist Experience live chat for pointing out things that were correct. And this is what I'm saying. When you're pointing out things that are correct, just because it goes against the atheist narrative doesn't mean it's not right. It means that you need to update your information out there, atheist.
Spinning a narrative goes both ways, and if you're trying to spin a narrative, you generally have an agenda for why you're trying to spin a narrative. You might even have an honest agenda, like you might be trying to eliminate a particular type of religion you find is egregiously harmful. But if you use the same tactics that you found repulsive while in the religion, you're no better at that point.
The ends don't justify the means. If I say, look, I want to normalize atheism by doing that, I'm going to use bad arguments, even though I know they're bad, but the ends justify the means because
but then
it helps
those arguments
atheism.
get taken down by good theistic arguments, and you find yourself shit out of luck.
And it backfires. I think it has the reverse effect. Yet I'll see atheists do it. I know atheists that I've seen firsthand. They know damn well it's a bad argument. They don't care. Well, it still gets Christians thinking, even though it's a bad argument. What? That's just stupid.
Wait, what?
Yeah. It's a bad argument. Yeah, sure, whatever, but it doesn't really matter. If it gets somebody out of Christianity or Young Earth creationism, no, I'm not going to argue somebody out of a bad position like flat Earth using bad information. It just won't happen. In order to turn
people to freaking flat
Earth. That's just saying, hey, I'm okay with dishonesty.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, how's that any different from lying for Jesus then? How's that any different from a Muslim saying, I can say what I want to the infidel as long as I get them to convert? You have to have consistency, and this is what I see lacking from a lot of the atheists out there. There's lacking this consistency when it comes to that.
Yeah, I've always had an appreciation for, like trying to engage as honestly as possible, admitting when you don't know something, honestly approaching an epistemic problem or something like that. When we're dealing with something in which nobody has access to like certain information, like we were talking about earlier with Numina, nobody has access to it.
Right.
So trying to figure out the fact of the matter or making claims about the fact of the matter and so on, you're not going to be dealing with that with any kind of certainty at all. Be honest about that. Why not be honest about that?
Well, haven't you seen people that are supposedly are experts in every topic they talk about? I mean, go look at like the C. Browns of the world. I mean, it's like no matter what you bring up, he's going to pretend he's an authority figure on it when he hasn't taken a single physics course in his life.
I mean, these are the clown car posses of the world, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The entire clown car posse is one big clusterfuck of people that have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. They are at the pinnacle of Mount Stupid on the DK, right?
I don't know if there's a lot of people here that remember the clown car posse. There was a point where you
really?
No, well, I mean, okay, so. And maybe I'm wrong about this, but there was a point where, like, every other video of you was talking about some like one of true empiricism,'s like off the wall weird claims about science.
Dude, come on,
right?
So yeah,
no, I agree with you, but then there was also a point where you were just like, I'm stopping the war with these people. Right. I'm stopping it. We're not talking about it anymore. We're gonna focus on different content, and that was some time ago. And I'm sure that you've gotten viewers since then that have no recollection of your battles with true empiricism.
My channel has 3 times the amount it did back, maybe even 4 back then. When I made the conscious decision not to engage with the Clown Car Boss anymore and just unsubscribe for them and not deal with them any longer, my subscription base went through the roof.
So let's introduce our audience a little bit to this, because it was interesting drama, regardless of whatever is like. Obviously, your audience grew once you stopped dealing with these guys, but there was like a period of time where it was constant. Would you so real quick, as far as the RP or as far as the Clown Car Posse, would you consider like Red Pill Religion?
Nice Freudian slip there, by the way.
Right. So because I wanted to bring them up. Would you consider Red Pill Religion like part of the new Clown Car Posse?
Wow, that's okay. I'm gonna have to think about this before I answer. But first, people that don't know the Clown Car Posse, you can go to Great Debate Community Wiki, and on our wiki page, on the Great Debate Community and the fandom site, we have a whole thing on the Clown Car Posse and the people in the clown car posse.
So who was the clown car posse? I wanted to get the idea about red pill religion in your head, but who was the clown car posse?
Well, it's quite extensive actually, but the main ones were G-Man, True Empiricism, Antonio Fletcher, Richard Raspberry, Jason Burns, C. Brown.
And did these guys like all know each other and hang out?
Yes.
Or okay.
Darwin's Deity, Veckel.
Darwin's Deity declared war on like half of them, though. Darwin's Deity is like rogue, almost. But I think a lot of the other guys that you're talking about, yeah, they were very close knit.
There's also a link to the GDC wiki in the description now, by the way, for anybody who needs it.
So with the clown car posse, like how did that drama like build up, and how did you bump into them?
I thought about your answer. I'm going to put Red Pill Religion under the new and improved GDC. The clown car posse.
So, don't say it's a new improved GDC. Yeah. That's a little.
They're not part of the GDC.
Okay.
Yeah, no, the new and improved clown car posse, because they're like the clown car posse, but the clown car posse all mostly were young Earth creationists, right? Or just totally scientific illiterate. I'm not going to say that the Red Pill Religion guys are scientific illiterate because they don't talk about science that much. They're just assholes.
Dean Esme does every once in a while. He talks about the limitations.
He is scientifically illiterate.
I would agree with that.
He is fake news.
But
that's
so
accurate
with the clown car posse. How did that build up, and like how did that saga kind of go?
The term was coined by Alex Botten, and the reason why they called him the clown car posse because it reminded them of clowns coming out of a car when they start to talk about things. They knew absolutely nothing what they spoke of. They were the group of people that got literally everything they spoke of wrong. They could not take correction. They thought they knew more than PhDs. Every time you would correct them, they would not even acknowledge they've been corrected to make the same mistakes over and over and over again, or say they came to the conclusion themselves and they never said that what you think that they said, right? They'll be like, "Oh, I never said that. I always agreed with Steve on that one."
And then you just look at earlier videos, and it's like, well, now we know you're lying.
Of course, outright lying. It's not even a matter of principle of charity or going, okay, maybe I can see it. It's straight up lying. It's no question about it. Remember the whole DNA and water saga?
Yeah, the DNA water saga and also ATP synapse. Those were all.
Synapse.
And there was something
ATP
to do with turbine in the middle of all that.
ATP synthase.
Yeah. Was that the thing with turbines?
Yeah, that was turbine.
There was something with a turbine.
Yeah.
That's the one where you had a video on Skylar Fiction's channel, wasn't it? The entire thing where, like, anytime you made a cogent point...
Skylar Fiction broke it down, I think.
Yeah, because anytime Steve made a cogent point, there was, like, a robotic voice just going, and here's why Steve is right, and they're all fucking stupid.
That sounds like... Yeah, Skylar does that kind of stuff. Yeah, well, and a lot of people do that, because when I did my debate with True Empiricism, he had been bugging me for a year, and I've explained to him what electron transport chain is. I explained to him his misconceptions about redox equations as far as... which I don't remember that much about, but he basically was implying that oxygen gets oxidized rather than reduced when it goes part of the complex 4 on the ETC. It produces water, and that whole chain takes an electron, and eventually it'll bind with hydrogen, and it forms water in the end result of it. And he just didn't understand that concept, and he was saying I was wrong. And rational mind, and CRISPR, and a whole bunch of other people who are biologists were going, no, Steve's right on this. There's really no debate on this. This is biochemistry. There is no other way to look at this. True, and he had bugged me for quite some time, and I finally said, whatever, dude, I'll debate you, because he was saying that ATP synthase was much like a turbine, and the reason that fails is because I used to work with turbines, and I do know how ATP synthase works. And I tried to explain to him that turbines work by converting fluid theory to rotational, right? Mechanical rotational energy.
Sure.
So you have like water would be a fluid, and then you could hits a blade, and the blade moves, right? That's a turbine. So in the ATP synthase, there's no fluid. It's a gradient of hydrogen potentials. So you have a differential amount of protons that are ionized helium nuclei from one side of the membrane to the other. That difference in potential causes electromagnetic force to have a proton will go through pass through the membrane, go into the ATP synthase, and bind with one of the things on the C ring to make a conformation change. long story short, it just basically moves because of impulse, right? It has conformational chains because of proton.
It's not a fluid.
It's not a fluid, right? And so I basically showed him these. I made 2 presentations, one about turbines, explaining how turbines work, pressure velocity compounding, and all that kind of stuff.
I remember this.
Yeah.
Now I was thinking, like, wait, you debated him, and then
Yeah.
like,
Do
no.
you
Now
remember
I remember the
Explaining how
PowerPoint
turbine-
that you made.
Yeah, and do you remember what his response was?
No,
I'll
I
never
don't.
forget what he said verbatim.
What did he say?
I don't want to continue with this anymore.
Stop beating me, Steve.
He
Stop
left.
it.
He left before the Q&A because he didn't want to continue because he got so beat and so just torn up. And then
I haven't had a debate experience like that. where
2
somebody
years
just-
later, he's like, "Well, the only reason I really didn't do well in that debate because I was too busy tuning my guitar." I was like,
You were tuning your guitar, but it's a debate that you were asking for years.
Like, that's a
Yeah.
formal,
You got
like
the
a
debate.
formal debate, and he leaves in the middle of the formal debate. Like, a lot of times, people will suffer through it and survive to the end of the debate. I've seen that a couple times on non
he
sequitur
cowered
show,
out.
but
Bad.
it just bowed out.
Yeah.
which is
So, but eventually you left. What was the, like, when you left and then your audience got bigger? Like, what was the defining moment of, like, all right, I'm not dealing with these guys anymore. I've got bigger things to talk about. When
we
did
started non sequitur
when you started non sequitur?
mostly. I mean, we had discussed. Look, we're not going to deal with these guys. Maybe tangentially, but when G-Man did 2 major things that were unforgivable. One, he said some very nasty things about a dear friend of mine, Jade West,
Yep.
who passed away, and so he can't ever ask for her forgiveness. That
wouldn't.
bothered me to no end.
he wouldn't.
Bothered
though.
Kyle. No, he wouldn't have. He would never have. It bothered Kyle too, because he had a lot of respect for Jade too. And the other thing was that he was a death peddler. He peddles the notion that you can go take vitamin B17, which is not a vitamin at all. It's actually amygdalin.
G-Man does this?
G-Man is a fan of
Tommy Hall.
Latril, right? And so
Oh, okay.
and so he's what I call a death peddler, because if you take the route that he wants rather than conventional, you're going to die much, much sooner. And my brother had cancer. He had colon cancer that metastasized to his lungs and his lymph nodes. He lived 10 years longer had he not been on conventional chemo and radiological therapy. So if he would have listened to G-Man, he would have been dead 10 years prior when he died. So, cancer is something that's in everybody's family. We all know somebody that's had cancer. And I wasn't very close to my brother, but he was still my brother, right? I mean, half brother. And, for somebody to go along saying, well, your brother shouldn't have taken conventional medicine. He should have just sucked on an apricot pill. You can kiss my ass, because I'm going to pretty much block you at that point, because I don't think those people deserve a platform at all. That's not saying those are the kind of people that it's not sunlight disinfects. It's ignoring them completely disinfects.
Yeah, at some point, I'm actually planning on doing an episode of Dangers of Woo on vitamin quote unquote B17. It's actually going to be a collaboration with me and Genetically Modified Skeptic once we actually get our schedules aligned, which has been very hard to do.
You'd be a good.
And then Riot points out it produces cyanide. Yeah, it's a bonded cyanide on the in Laetrile, and then that cyanide eventually through metabolization will become unbounded.
Like, I knew that
cyanide.
I knew that G-Man was, like, terrible at arguments. I didn't realize that he was doing this stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
That surprises. Okay, so wow, but so
he also thinks flat earthers. He also thinks flat earthers make good arguments.
I remember that.
Yeah,
that was interesting. So
I'd prefer if I never remembered that. Like, the mere fact that you said it hurts me.
As well as it should.
So you gave up on the CCP at that point. Was it just G-Man that was the catalyst for that, as well as the starting of the non-sequitur show, or did some other things happen?
No, that was kind of the big picture. I mean, obviously the GDC had some problems. There was a split. There was people going their own way. I wanted to take things into a different direction. They were viscerally going after me. They failed miserably. And I was like, well, you know what? I'm going to let them take the Clown Car Posse. Let them talk about them 24/7. Let them make 50,000 videos about them, because nobody's really watching them, right? I mean,
I got tired of it, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you watch any video that these people make on the Clown Car Posse, they'll get about 150 views, right? I'll get 15. They get about 150 views. I get about 1,500 views. So I get 10 times the amount of views in the same amount of time, and I'll have videos of 10,000 views, because I don't care to get into that stuff any longer. I want to talk about.
It does result in like rhetorical wheel spinning. when you're dealing
Sometimes
with
it's fun. We're doing it so often.
thing
Like
over
we're
and
doing
over.
it now, right? We're talking
Right,
about
right. We are talking about it, but it's like it's also as a well, that was interesting. It's over now.
Yeah,
And the
now
reason why
it's a
over
matter
is
of
because-
history. We're talking about it as a matter of history.
Yeah,
That's
I
the difference.
think
Because
a
it
lot
was
of them
done-
left YouTube, like Lucifer just said in the live chat. I know G-Man and True are still around, but I'm not subscribed to them, and I don't hear anything from them. To me, they're just not even on
Like the
YouTube.
last big thing that we heard from G-Man was when he popped into the non sequitur after show with Aaron Raw
That was
and
hilarious.
thrust his cat into the camera. Like that was fun.
Yeah, that was great. That was the funnest hangout I've ever had in my life.
So, I guess like as we're winding down, now that we're moving into, we've got the non sequitur show, with your news and your channel is tackling some different topics now. We talked a little bit about the definition of atheism. What other subjects are you doing on your personal channel where you're tackling, and like what's going on next for your channel?
Well, I'm
DEF CON
unfortunately
science.
I know there's a couple of things I like to dive into a little bit more. I haven't really gone into politics much, as you guys know.
Do you want to?
I'm finding that I might not have a choice.
Really?
Well, I mean, when I going into the election, I realized Trump was going to be a bad president. I mean, I never once ever said this is going to be good for the country, right? I didn't want Hillary, so I was like, okay, Trump is going to win, and I was like, I'd rather have Trump and let the world burn. I didn't take.
You didn't realize the world was actually going to burn.
Yeah, I mean,
Like look at California. Look at where you are right now. The world
Yeah,
is burning.
I just cannot believe this man. And I look at Ocean. You've known me longer than anybody around here. I'm not one of those people to do dog whistle politics or to do what's the other?
No, I've known you to be actively against that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. What is it when you say a term so you can fit in with people? Oh God.
Virtue
virtual
signaling.
Virtual signaling. Thank you. So I don't do virtual signaling. All right. I never have. So when I finally get to the point where I'm saying, okay, Trump, you suck. I'm not virtual signaling. I'm not trying to be one of those, let's be with the crowd kind of thing. Cause I often will fight against that, but I'm like, no, you actually suck. The things you've done are fucking stupid.
Yeah. He's definitely hasn't been good for science. So is that like part of the reason why you jump into a little bit of politics is because
that's the other thing, because Trump and also Pence, they're just anti-science. Right. They really are, especially Pence. And I have done DEF CON 1 science, and even though we're on a little hiatus, I want to get more science. People have been loving the fact that we have PhDs on and go, hey, let's talk about science. And not in a way that they're used to, because usually when you watch a scientific program, the PhD is either way too over their head or it's just boring. But we're talking about it in a way that's kind of in the middle. We do take a lot of advanced concepts, but make them very simple, and that's a challenge to
bring up the accessibility of it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's certainly hard. It's not necessarily harder to be a science communicator than it is to be a scientist, but it certainly is rarer to be a good science communicator. I think
it requires two skills. It requires a skill, and also requires a skill in communication, obviously.
Well, if you look at you've watched my science, DEF CON 1 science. I don't think anybody watched those and go, oh, well, Steve cleared it, doesn't know science. I have a basic understanding, and then I have to be able to communicate that, right? So you're right. There is two factors going on there. But I have people, I've had other people that don't like me go, oh, well, Steve doesn't know science. But when you ask him, what has he got wrong? Oh, well, no, he doesn't really get anything wrong. He's just, not really good at science. Okay. How does that work? Whatever. Sure. Let's go with that.
So like when you're saying you might not have a choice, are you talking about like just how YouTube channels tend to go? Because I've noticed like a lot of atheist creators, and in your case agnostic, tend to go into social issues after a while.
It's inevitable, don't you think, in some ways?
I've thought about it, and I'm not like yes and no, because it does, like Cosmic Skeptic, for example, has been able to go for quite some time as being just an atheist channel. He dabbles a little bit in social issues, but it's usually just like on Islam or something like that. But a lot of them, like The Amazing Atheist, it happened. With Sargon of Akkad, it happened. Thunderfoot, it happened. Like Thunderfoot wound up going on this like crusade against feminism, and then there was like a divide between him and Sargon of Akkad on Trump and Brexit. So if you're going to be like going into that, like, I guess, where would you start on politics? Like, what's the conversation in politics?
I definitely think secularism is a big deal, right? I mean, I want to make sure that secularism stays. But I think when it comes to the politics, I don't like the way Trump has done policies when it comes to taking kids away from their parents, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think this whole notion is, I can't wrap my head around how he thinks his immigration policy is sound in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
I can help you with that. His name is Donald Trump.
Well, and I mean, I just read today he appointed an ambassador for some lady that makes handbags, who has no ambassadorial skills or training or nothing. She makes handbags, and this is his ambassador to some whatever. It's like
the first lady was called for the firing of a security, like deputy of the.
Yeah, what's her name?
Exactly
yeah, because she says that she's like mean to everybody. Yeah, I don't remember her name though. What's her name?
Yeah. I don't recall. I just remember that it was the thing that stood out to me. It was a national security position as a deputy of something, but I don't recall it. I wasn't expecting to be talking.
Trump
about
did fire her though.
Yeah, Trump did fire, or she resigned, or Trump fired her, or whatever. The thing that stuck out to me was like, look, the first lady is calling for the firing of somebody publicly. And that's the weird
bizarre,
part.
Isn't it?
I didn't expect. That's unheard of.
There's so many unheard of things in this administration.
It's unheard of because you've got people with no political experience outside of sales pitching, which is part of politics, I know, but it's not the useful part of politics when it comes to actually creating policy. But you've got people who have no idea what to do with any type of political power, but they no less have it and are inexperienced in it, so you have all of this all these unprecedented things happening because you've got people who have no idea what they're doing. It's like asking, well, it's unprecedented that this new chemist came in and started lighting fires all around the entire lab. He's going to get everybody killed. Well, that guy's not a chemist. He has no experience, and you let him in a lab that most of our PhDs are in. Of course you started fires.
Mm-hmm. And also, I've done over 1,000 videos, right? I got to branch out a little bit more. And like today, I really wanted to watch this video. I didn't get a chance to. I was previous engagement, but I promised I would. And Christy Santiago did a video on libertarianism today. I plan to watch it, Christy. I will.
She's in the chat.
But we had talked about it a little bit earlier that she was going to do it, and she's getting into politics, and I was like, this is great. I mean, not sure whether I agree or disagree with her. I don't know enough about it yet to dive into it. It sounds like I do. I think we both agree Trump is an idiot. But since Christy is, my future ex-lesbian wife in my own mind, whatever she says, I'm probably going to end up agreeing with, but we'll see. I love you, Christy.
So, like,
wait, so I can do that right.
You have to make sure it's in the frame.
Yeah. It also makes them look like I'm doing something completely different, right?
About beard level, and you'll be good.
Okay.
All right. So, I guess if there's anything else that you want to talk about in closing, Suris, is there anything you want to jump in on?
I'd say that at some point, I would like for me and Steve to do another video about things that need to stop happening in conversations.
I've already got a few of them in mind.
Awesome, because I enjoyed the first one, even though I did make you look like a meth head.
Mm-hmm.
I will make sure.
Response on that, people liked it though, and they want to hear another one. And I think the next one we're going to do is even going to be better, because I wrote it down. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I wrote down some things that I thought would be really good that I see pervasive in the atheist community, of where I just go, cringe level. Stop this.
Just stab.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the main thing that I would point out, is that's most of the time when me and Steve do videos, there's going to be, it might seem a little bit like shooting across the bow, but it's more just kind of dealing with the fact that there's bad ideas and stop the bad ideas.
Uriah, my friend Uriah Christensen asked in the live chat, he said, will you get Eric Hovind to debate? Yeah, I've gone against Eric twice, actually. People may not know that, but I have gone against Eric Hovind twice. He literally has no clue in the world what the hell he's talking about. All he does is just throw things out there and expects the other person not to have an understanding of it.
He just expects.
If you do, then he just says, well, then you're just not up with the current literature. Okay, yeah, let's go with that, Eric.
Yeah,
we're gonna get him on again.
Yeah, there's certainly. I actually had an opportunity to go to Creation today when I was in Pensacola last, but I didn't have the. he wasn't in at the time, which kind of upset me because I really wanted to go to there. I guess they're pretty much just down to a warehouse now.
I haven't been keeping up with Eric Hovind. Is that like, remember like when that was like a new show, Creation Today? But is that still around?
No, it was all production value, but nothing of substance. He even got the Grand Canyon wrong. He got the inlet and the outlet wrong, and I don't think he ever bounced back from that because you're going to spend tens of thousands of dollars on your production value quality to have something like so fundamentally wrong and not get right. You know,
they had like this nice set and everything, and it was like it looked good. Like
it was great. Oh, it was fantastic, but their fact checker was just not right.
You mean the son of Kent Hovind didn't have a good fact checker?
God damn it!
Damn, I have no idea.
Surprise to no one, right?
That was happening.
That's really funny.
That's so strange that you mentioned that. But with that said, I do think there aren't really any super chats to get to since we did try to get all the super chats as they came in, mainly because most of you wanted to see me beat with a hammer. So I don't want that.
I want more of that.
Is this just gonna have to be a running theme that every time somebody super chats I get hit that many times with the hammer?
I mean, I say yes, but
I thought we were friends.
I'm telling you, go to Pornhub, look up Suris beat with hammer. I'm telling you, you're going to be surprised.
Somebody just has a cartoon of my avatar getting hit.
No, somebody's just going to do a compilation of all the times you get hit in this over this podcast and just upload on YouTube or on Pornhub and just be like.
Vibrantly Brantley just did a super chat. I just subbed and unsubbed for the sound. Don't abuse that. If that gets abused, I will take sound effects away from you guys. So be responsible.
All right, guys. So I guess that's it. Steve, do you have any closing words? I'm going to say Happy Thursday to everybody, and I guess anything that you want to finish off with, Steve.
Not specifically, just a couple things. We got an upcoming schedule on non-sequitur show.
Sweet, yes, go into that.
We our big thing is going to be we got Destiny. He's a big name gamer. We got him coming on Friday, November 30th. We're going to be talking about circumcision. What can go wrong with that? I know.
Yeah, that's going to be fun.
That's going to go over so well.
That's going to be
talk
fun.
about a gamer.
It's going to be very calm, very
off.
collected. People are going to be very civil. There's going to be no killing or throwing of heavy objects with each other. But. Yeah, no, actually,
will there be a live circumcision?
What we have in mind, we can't say yet. But whoever volunteered their penis for this, we do thank you. We also got the Masonic Manic coming in TMM. He's on the 26th, and we then. Before that, we have the Golden Nuns on the 25th. So if you guys have not voted yet for the Golden Nuns, of who's your favorite content creator, what's your favorite video, what was your favorite dumpster fire, go to Twitter or go to our page on www.nonsec.show.com and find the Golden Nuns. If not, you'll find it on Twitter. Just go to Nonsec on Twitter. You'll find it.
We'll put a link to it in the description.
Go vote for the Golden Nuns because that's going to be a big event. Which actually, you know what that kind of came out of was the Ronnies. Remember the Ronnies?
Yes, I remember the Ronnies.
Yeah, so I started with that and
dumb fuck of the year from.
Yeah, well, Kyle made the intro to the Ronnies for that, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that the Golden Duck, the Golden Nun, is just the next evolution of the Ronnies for the non sequitur show. Which again, both of them came out of the dumb fuck of the year, clearly. So.
All right, you putting it in, Suris?
But anyways, that's my
shtick. So I can put it in.
So, thank you guys for having me. It's always a pleasure to come on.
Yeah,
and talk
absolutely.
To you.
Yeah, thanks for coming out for us. And we've known each other for a long time, and I'm happy to be your friend, man.
And I'm proud to call you a friend.
I've known Steve for a little bit of time, and I'm not happy to be his friend. What do you?
Yeah, Suris is still a mild acquaintance to me, but whatever.
I still remember.
Suris, you were a great dude. I know people right off the bat. When I first met you, I knew you were an honorable guy, and that you would be popular. And I told you that, and. I told you. Remember, I told you. I said it doesn't really matter much until you get a platform, until you have subs, right?
there was one of the earliest conversations that me and Steve had in a live chat was me saying that I would gladly throw darts at Steve on live on my channel, and Steve was just like, "Well, you've got to have viewers first."
Because he had like 12 subs at the time.
Yeah, I was quite the small channel at that time.
Come a long way, baby.
Woo!
But anyways, thank you guys.
Absolutely. All right.